Okay. If Langdon were up here today, starting off something like this, he would probably say, "Lords and ladies, lend me your ears." What a zest for life that man had. Oh my God, he simply glowed with enthusiasm for life itself. When you would bump into Langdon at a party, you'd say, "Hey Langdon, how you doing?" Well, he took that as a very serious question. He'd stop right there, and he would lean forward a little and puff out his chest, and he'd say, "I am doing fantastic." Oh, it was neat. And 2 months later, you'd run into him on the street, and you'd say, "Langdon, how you doing?" And he'd say, "If things get any better, I'm going to probably be arrested." One time during the Jimmy Carter recession in the mid-'70s, we were walking downtown, and he bumped into an old acquaintance, hadn't seen him in quite a while, and so they talked. "Well, Langdon, how are you doing?" And Langdon says, "I am doing fabulous." Well, once the acquaintance walked on the street, I said, "Langdon, how can you say that? How can you say you're doing fabulous? Aren't any architects in town who's working? Construction is completely at a standstill. Everybody's scared to death. Everything's in disaster. How can you say things are fabulous?" And he just looks at me and he says, "Well, if you say things are fabulous, things are going to be fabulous. If you say things are in the state of disaster, believe me, they're going to be in a state of disaster." Whew, what a great lesson for a young man. Just one of many great words of wisdom that I learned from Langdon. There's a bunch of little points that I want to cover today, and I thought, geez, there's just no way I'm going to be able to remember them all. There's just too many. So maybe I'll write down some notes, and I thought, well, I'd get a 8.5 by 11, and I'd write kind of the key phrases that I wanted to cover. And then I thought, well, Langdon would never do that. Langdon would write them on 3 by 5 cards. So I've got my 3 by 5 cards here. But the difference is, he wouldn't have approved of these cards. No, not at all. There's a lot of flaws here. For one, they've got lines on one side. You don't want lines on either side of your 3 by 5 card. First of all, if you've got lines on it, then that forces you to write on that line, and it forces you to hold it in that position, which is a rather generic proportion. There's nothing interesting, graceful, or beautiful about that. But if you turn the card that way, now that's the golden rectangle. That's a thing of great beauty. So you can put that in your hand like this, pull out your pen, and you're looking at something proportionally correct, so you can get off doing what you're supposed to do with 3 by 5 cards, which is, oh my God, I need to draw a little detail of the way that bracket joins with that beam, because it isn't quite right, and I need to pass that on to somebody so we can get it corrected. Or he might take out that 3 by 5 card and draw a little map how to get to his house on South Garfield Street. He never wanted to go anywhere without 3 by 5 cards. The other thing, though, that had to go hand in hand with a 3 by 5 card was the pilot pen. I think everybody's got one of those that Krista so graciously had engraved for us. I know mine's going to be a real treasure. But what's so special about a pilot pen? Well, let me tell you, they're very, very special. When you try to draw a line with a regular ballpoint pen, and I don't care, it could be a mountain ball pen, it doesn't matter. Those things, they just wander all over the place. They're too slippery. And when you go to start a line, it starts up kind of wimpy and it goes along and then it kind of ends with a whimper. Nothing good about it at all. Now a pilot pen, you put that baby down there and hold it just for a split second, and it would start to bubble a little bit. Now you could pull the pen along, and actually as the line got to about the halfway point, it would thin out just a little bit, and then right to the end you slow down and then stop. So you've got this line with a perfect start and a perfect ending. Now you can use that to make sketches or just to write your name or to draw a map. It was a perfect writing instrument. Problem was, he was so dependent on those that they would be traveling in Europe ready to see some architectural wonder, and all of a sudden he realized his pilot pen had gone dry. Oh my God, and where's my backup? It's not there. Stop, everything stop. We've got to go shopping to find my 3x5 cards and all the pins. I've got to have the pins. So Krista, of course, as gracious as she was, she just realized there was no way to go anywhere until he had his pins. But so what made Langdon have this zest for life? Was it biological, chemical? Was he born with it? Was it just an accident that will never be repeated? I don't think so. I think he chose to have zest for life on purpose. He thought about it every day, and he chose to have the state of mind that brought himself and others around him joy. So I thought, well, where did that spirit of zest for life, where did that get started? And how did it happen? Well, one day when he was just a very, very young man, he found himself in a line of a whole bunch of other young men. And there was a mean, grumpy guy on the other side of this line. And they all were told to count off, and they counted off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 200, whatever. Everybody that's divisible by 5, take 1 step forward. And the mean, grumpy guy started pointing his finger, and he said, "You are now United States Marines." Wow. Imagine Langdon. Here's a guy, prep schools. He was a guy that was destined to be an Eastern aristocrat. He was supposed to be on the polo team. He wasn't supposed to be a Marine grunt. Jeez, how did that ever happen? But he did it, and he joined the battalion. There were 500 men in the battalion, and he landed on all the beaches of all the South Pacific tour. He was the guy, they made all these movies with all the great movie stars. He was the one that actually did it. Only one of 3 that survived all the landings. One of 3. So he never talked about war stories, never glorified the experience, but he would occasionally express wonder at why him? Why didn't he get hit, injured, killed, blown up? Sometimes they would all be sleeping on the beach, and a Japanese Zero would come by and strafe the beach. And 3 people would be killed, and then there'd be one that lived, and he would be the one that lived. He could never understand it. But when it was all over, he felt a responsibility to all those young men that died and that were critically injured to lead a full and joyful life. And I think that's where it kind of began, is that he made a conscious decision to have a wonderful, positive attitude. And the more he said these wonderful things about his state of mind, the more it happened. Of course, in the military, that's where he lost his hearing. Firing that weapon day after day after day ruined his hearing. So he did suffer some damage. But he was able to do a great job with his hearing loss, no doubt. He survived it well. Well, some years before, he was fortunate enough to meet Krista. And that he was. He was fortunate when he met you, Krista. But some years before that, he was being interviewed, which he was interviewed quite often for the newspapers and the magazines. And they asked him, "What are your main interests?" And he said, "Number 1, women. Number 2, fox hunting. Number 3, urban design. And number 4, music. Number 5, preservation." And then, I'm sure I wasn't there, but I'm sure he leaned forward and looked right in that interviewer's face and said, "In that order." So I'm going to talk a little bit about each one of those subjects. Women being number 1. So there's a phase of his life that was before Krista, nothing to do with her, and then there was a great phase after Krista. But before Krista, he was remarkably different. Everyone remembers. Langdon, he had an appreciation for women that, just to say that he loved women is like to say black is a dark color. It doesn't begin to really describe what it was about women, but he loved everything about women. He loved everything from the shoes to the purse to the fragrance, the hairstyle. He just adored being with women. He was certainly not a man's man, a man that hung out in the bar, slammed down beers, belched and told off-color jokes. That wasn't him. He would much rather be with a really well-preserved 55-year-old woman. So, but to kind of describe where he was at when his feelings for women reminds me of the time that we were being interviewed at Atlantic Richfield. We're in a high-rise, we're 30 stories up in downtown Denver, and we go into the lobby, and there's 3 executives that come down to meet us, and they start walking us down the hall. And of course, I'm just a young kid at the time. I'm very nervous. I'm hoping no one better ask me any questions because I have no idea how to answer anything. So as I'm walking down the hall, I look over and there's no Langdon there. It's like, where's Langdon? The 3 executives are walking towards the conference room. Langdon, I can just see the backside of him, and he's kind of leaning over this desk. And I thought, what the hell is he doing? So I run back down there, and I get in just on the last part of the conversation. Sitting there is a woman, maybe 52, well put together. And she's looking up at him, like with this deer in the headlights kind of look, and he's saying, baby, there's one thing for sure. I don't know what that perfume is that you're wearing, but it is working with your body chemistry. And I was like, holy cow, Langdon, they're going to start without us. So he turns around and he does this kind of thing that he'd sometimes do when something was finished. It's kind of like an Olay. And he does his little Olay, and off we go down the hall. And I've got no idea if we got that job or not. It was 30 years or more ago. I don't remember that part, but I sure remember him walking down that hall towards that conference room with that little skip he's got. Just so proud and pleased with himself because he made that woman's day. He really did. And he just enjoyed that feeling. Just enjoyed that feeling. You know, sometimes you think, oh, it's so gross when an older man chases women, but Langdon never chased young girls. He had absolutely no use for them whatsoever. He'd talk sometimes about dating a 35-year-old, but he never did. He just had no interest in a woman like that because women don't get their act together until about 45. And they don't start approaching their prime until they're about 55. And then, if they're really special, they just keep on going. So why would I have any interest in a 20-year-old? So Langdon was a unique individual in that he didn't have a birthday. He had a birthday season. And the reason why he needed a birthday season was he wanted to go out to lunch with all the old ex-girlfriends. He wanted to catch up with them. He wanted to see them. He wanted to flirt with them a little bit. So for the 2 weeks before and the 2 weeks after, he'd have his birthday season. I can remember one year that was particularly successful in his point of view was flowers started showing up on his actual birthday in the morning, and we'd put them on the desk. By the afternoon, the desk was full, and we had to put them out in the reception area. So he had these certain phrases that he liked to use about women, and I'm going to repeat those. He would say, that is one well-preserved woman. Nothing wrong with that woman, but she's geographically unsuitable. Sometimes, on rare occasions, he would say, oh my God, that woman is better than a left-handed redhead. And then the one that he would never say this standing still, was always moving. I just met my new best friend. And I liked it at dinner, he would lean over, baby, you got to remember, I'm deaf. You're going to have to talk closer into my ear. So, and of course, the well-put-together woman, he